Welcome to Face the State, everybody. I'm John Hook. It's a very interesting question. 30 years of the bilingual education experience in Arizona. And the question is, what do you do with a child who comes into school who maybe only speaks Spanish? Do you try to assimilate them into English immediately, put them into the immersion and try to teach them a language immediately, or do you bridge them to learning English while teaching them Spanish perhaps in other subjects like math or maybe even the sciences or social studies, to keep them moving along forward in their education before they actually learn English entirely, become fluent in it and can operate in that language? The recent stories that are coming out in the newspaper right now, a study by the Department of Education suggesting despite $361 million put into bilingual education, only 4% of the students in it became fluent and English proficient. That's the question. Is bilingual education working? And we'll talk about the ballot initiative that you could be voting on in November of the year 2000. Our guest this week on Face the State to my immediate right is Margaret Garcia Dugan, principal at Glendale High School and one of the proponents for English for the children of Arizona. And to her right is Joe Lopez, an Arizona State Senator, a proponent of bilingual education, a defender of bilingual education over the years. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Is it working, Margaret Dugan?
No, it's not.
Where has it fallen?
It has fallen in the sense that they do not teach students English. They are teaching them mainly in their native language. Therefore, the students are not acquiring English in order to be successful in our schools today. And in order for it to be successful, or at least a student to be successful in the schools in the United States, they must learn English.
You're saying they're learning predominantly, continuing to be taught in their native language. Is that a failing of bilingual education in the implementation? Or is the concept still valid, that you should maybe bridge these kids along?
I believe that if you want a student to succeed in our public schools or private schools in this country, they must be taught English as quickly as possible. And they need to be immersed into the language as quickly as possible. I don't believe that you need to teach a student in their native language in order for them to acquire a new language.
Senator Lopez, I take it you disagree strongly with that.
I disagree very strongly. Let me tell you that in Tucson, 1919 till 1967, they had a program in their public schools very similar to the program that Rununce wants to bring into the state of Arizona. During those almost 50 years, the graduation rate never exceeded 40% of the students that were limited English speaking. Since 1967, where Tucson Unified and other school districts throughout the state have adopted a form of bilingual education or bilingual education, the graduation rates in the Tucson Unified School Districts are now about 87%, a tremendous amount of success.
You credit that to bilingual education?
I certainly do.
Although we read that the Arizona Minority Education Policy Analysis, they did some studies. They found that only half of Hispanics and Native Americans graduated from high school. So the numbers are abysmal either way.
They are abysmal either way. But let me suggest to you that even the harshest critics of bilingual education will concede that when put side to side, those students that have engaged in bilingual education programs, as bad as they've been in the state of Arizona, do a lot better than the students that do not have the benefits of a bilingual education program.
Margaret Garcia Dugan,
yes.
Efforts in California to do away with bilingual education, the Rununce protests that we've got some videotape of. This was in Tucson and it got rather nasty. And as I had mentioned on an earlier Face the State program, I spent some time in some of the bilingual education programs in Tucson and came away rather impressed with what was being accomplished. I guess the question I'm left with now, when you hear that only 4% are actually coming through bilingual education in a successful manner, what did I see and what is really going on in some of the other schools? Is there a problem with the program? Or again, I ask you, is the theory still valid?
As far as students in our schools today, if we want them to compete with other students, and we're going to give them assessments in English, I don't know how teaching a student in one language and assessing them in another is going to help that student.
Is there any evidence they fall behind when they're trying to learn English during that time? They're falling behind perhaps in math, other subjects? I
would imagine they would. I don't see all the research because I'm at the high school level. We teach all of our non-native speakers of English, and I have 125 non-native speakers of English. We teach them English for a year to 2 years. They are mainstreamed into mathematics, social studies, and they are given the same assessments that all of the other students are given, and they fare very well.
Senator Lopez, she's on the front line. She's saying it doesn't work, and she's seeing it firsthand. How do you argue with that?
Students all over this world are learning 1, 2, and 3 languages without any detrimental effect to their native language. The students in this country are no less capable. We think that a bilingual education program properly implemented with credentialed teachers will go a long way in increasing the academic achievement rate of that student, increasing the graduation rate, decreasing substantially the dropout rate that we have in our schools today.
Something you just mentioned, I want to seize on it, detrimental to their native language. Some people watching this program would listen to that and say, this is about preserving a culture, about preserving a language. It may not be about learning.
Many of them do say that, and they use that as an excuse for not having bilingual education programs. After all, we live in America, and the culture that we ought to be promoting is American.
So you don't dispute that?
I do not. There are some experts, however, that believe that if you are going to teach a foreign language, at least you should get acquainted with their culture so that you can better understand it. Now, I don't think that it's necessary.
Is that what the schools should be doing?
I don't think it's necessary, and in our piece of legislation that I have been presenting, we have put a component in there that teaches dual language acquisition without a cultural component.
This finding by the State Department of Education saying that despite a $361 million investment in bilingual education, 4% English proficient. How can that type of success rate or lack thereof be defended and continue to throw money at it?
It cannot be defended. If it were true, everybody should turn against bilingual education. The fact of the matter that those figures are skewed considerably.
Skewed in what way?
Skewed in this manner. The Department of Education has admitted, for example, that we have 32,000 new students into the system taking bilingual education programs. Nobody would expect 32,000 students to be able to get out right away and compete and pass a test to get out. So that's 32 out of 111,000. You subtract that and you subtract those recent people that have come into the state and are taking only 1 year of bilingual education. Those people should not be in any kind of a system where they're making analysis about this program. Now, let me suggest further. 4% is a profile for 1 year. Even if we assume that a 4% is a correct figure, you have to multiply that by the number of years that a school is presenting the program in order to get somewhat of an accurate figure. So if a school is presenting these programs for 4 years, it would be 4 times 4, which is 16, mm-hmm. Still very dismal, very disappointing. 4 times 8, 32. That would still be very, very bad. But we do not, cannot make anything out of this report that they have presented.
We at least